Thank you, Chairman. And Senator Lee, this is an important hearing. I think the American people, given a choice to topics that we might discuss in Congress, would put this at the top of the list. At least they tell us that when we take polls. It's interesting to me that we live in a country where so many people can spell the word Xarelto. And you just wonder, how in the world did that happen? Could it be that the pharmaceutical industry is spending $6 billion a year? Is it possible advertising? Is it possible that the fact that we see their ads 9 times a day on average is educating the Americans on these drugs? Senator Grassley and I decided to ask the General Accounting Office for some information on this, and they did a study. They found that between 2016 and 2018, advertised drugs on television and other places accounted for 58% of Medicare's budget for medications. Coincidence? These ads ballooned Medicare spending to a tune of $320 billion over 3 years. When I asked Blue Cross Blue Shield in Chicago, why are premiums going up? Said number one reason, the high cost of prescription drugs. They advertise them on television so consumers will ask for them at the doctor's office. The doctor then has a choice. Explain to them why they may not need it, maybe even lose the patient, or just prescribe it. Most times they just prescribe it. And it ends up being added to the cost of health care in America. And it just keeps going up unless you're lucky enough to live in Canada. Instead, you're going to be stuck with these prices. So, Mr. Mitchell, when it comes to this advertising on television, since the United States and New Zealand are the only 2 countries in the world that allow it, what value is it to the consumer?
I think the more information you give to consumers, the better, to help them understand the choices they are being called upon to make. I'm not sure that including prices in ads will lower prices, but I do believe that it will help consumers understand better what's happening to them. We also support, frankly, eliminating the tax deduction for consumer advertising by drug companies in order to discourage their use, because they really are used only to sell more drugs at higher prices.
Well, I might just say that the fact that a drug as common as Lantus insulin, approved in 2000 with 45 follow-on patents, it helped to block competition for 37 years. During that time, the price of Lantus insulin was hiked 25 times, from $35 to more than $300. And that's not an unusual situation. Unfortunately, it's a common situation. So perhaps if the consumer finally catches on that these drugs are just going wildly high, there might be a second thought about the heavily advertised Humira as to what it might cost on a monthly basis. I'm glad your drugs are saving your life. I'm glad you're here to tell us about it. But there comes a point where you say it's your money or your life when it gets right down to it. So let me ask you this, if I can, Mr. Levitt. In your testimony, you cite the $83 billion investment in research and development by pharma companies in 2019. You state, quote, due to uncertainty around R&D endeavors, investors require higher returns to compensate for higher risk. This pharmaceutical industry responds to every single policy proposal on drug pricing, claiming it will chill innovation, and that a single penny in reduced profits could mean a freeze on life-saving innovation. How do you square the colossal amount spent on spending? How do you square the fact that 14 largest drug makers spent more on stock buybacks than on research and development during the past 5 years?
Thank you, Chairman Durbin. So these are individual, obviously, economic decisions by pharmaceutical companies. And I would say, let me step back and start out by saying, I can assure you that biopharmaceutical companies do not invent life-saving medicines in order to make them inaccessible to patients. There's a balance between innovation and access, and innovation is critical. R&D spend is very high and has increased significantly over the past several years. It's at a peak now, and the U.S. accounts for the vast majority of that spending. Companies also put their money into making patients aware of the benefits and potential uses of their products through direct-to-consumer advertising, which is an important means of conveying information to patients about drugs. As you said, prescribers then have the choice of whether to prescribe the drug.
It doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way, and you know it. If you get the consumer remembering the name of the drug and remembering the person who skipped across the field of flowers, that go into their doctors and say, I think I need this. You know that most doctors, instead of getting into a debate, are going to prescribe it. That's why you win on consumer advertising. People are partially educated, and doctors neither have the inclination nor time to debate with those patients.
Mr. Chairman, I would rather not posit that doctors are making irresponsible prescribing decisions because of their patients coming into them, but it may be that we have to agree to disagree on that one.
Well, we do disagree on that one. I do want to tell you there has been a massive investment in innovation in pharmaceuticals. It's been done in Washington with the National Institutes of Health. The numbers are pretty amazing. Funding from the NIH contributed to the published research associated with every single new drug approved by FDA between 2010 and 2019, 356 new medications. We're putting billions each year into the NIH. We want to make sure that consumers can afford the products that these pharmaceutical companies generate from that research. Do you think we're getting that kind of return?
Senator Durbin, I would say that the research ecosystem is a complete whole of which basic research funded by the government, by NIH, is an important part. But NIH does not bring drugs into clinical development and marketing approval. That can only be done by pharmaceutical companies. And I think if we look at the statements of the NIH itself, they will acknowledge that without the efforts of the pharma industry to develop and bring drugs to market, their basic research would not produce patient-accessible innovation.
But if you listen to Dr. Moody, and she's pretty convincing, the thickets that we've created in patent law cannot serve the purpose of research or innovation or the benefits to the consumers. It's all about monopoly control of some of these drugs so that you can have profits for a longer period of time. Isn't that right?
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would take issue with a couple of comments made by my learned colleague here, Dr. Moody. First of all, it's not that easy to get a patent in the first place. To get a patent, you have to show that the invention is patentable. It has to have novelty, utility, and other features that entitle it to get a patent. And I would also point out that innovation does not stop upon approval of a product. There are many very important innovations in product development post-approval that benefit patients tremendously. Things like even changing the dosage form of a product from an injectable to an oral, even reducing dosage frequency or allowing for a fixed drug combination instead of having the patient take multi-drugs for HIV or other conditions. I could go on. There's many, many, many innovations. Improving stability profile, that's something that's been in the news recently. It's obviously a key.
I'm sorry, I'm out of time. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You can, I mean, if you want, Senator Durbin,
I just
please,
wanted
if you
Dr.
want to
Moody-
allow him to finish and then Dr. Moody to respond, and then we'll
That's
turn
what
it
I'm
over to
looking
Senator
for.
Lee.
I'd like to ask Dr. Moody to respond to that.
Okay. Dr. Moody.
Sure. So we see the US patent system as being an outlier now compared to other systems around the world. In the US, there are, of course, rules for examining patents that are working well, but it's also easy to circumvent those rules in order to do this numbers gaming, where you can build up incrementally different patents of having claims of incrementally different wording to make an army of continuation patents, all derived from just one original patent filing. This ends up building a patent thicket that's both protracted and multi-layered. So overall, we do believe that the root cause of the problem is the examination procedures and the rules that the USPTO is using, and that by tightening up those rules, it can help provide a more balanced patent system that can provide the benefits to both incentivizing innovation as well as allowing affordable medicines to come onto the market in a more appropriate time.
Madam Chairman, if I could just read one sentence into the record, and thank you for your patience.
Of course.
The top 12 best-selling drugs in America each have an average of 71 patents, and 78% of all new patents are for drugs that are already on the market. Thank you.